Hi, this is Fountain here, and today we are going to talk about a term that some would call bush tucker, and that is usually associated with particular foods that you would find, I guess, like wild, and that are usually native, if that's the term that you want to use, to the land that they are growing on. And it's often a term used in Australia. Because of my own ethical reasons, I'm going to stick to the plant-based bush tuckers that I have quite enjoyed eating for certain reasons, and obviously I would recommend that you speak with as many elders as you possibly can if you want to learn more about bush tucker foods. You want to learn more about the culture, you want to learn more about the stories, you want to learn more about what it was used for, the importance that these things had to play within First Peoples culture, and especially in Australia. So the first one I want to talk about is probably quite well known in Australia in certain states, and that is the Banyana. So the Banyana is probably closely related to the pine family. It can grow into a very large tree, and they usually found in sort of southeast Queensland and northern Queensland as well. You can still find them in other areas, but those are the main areas in which they normally are still here and growing. And they can produce, I guess, like pine cones, if you want to call them that, really, really large. They can be up to like 10 kilos in weight. And obviously that can cause a bit of danger if you're not careful walking underneath a bunyana tree. So always be on the lookout if you are underneath some bunyana trees, of course. Now, they don't flower every year. They normally flower every 3 to 4 years. So if you have a tree and you get bunyanut one year, you might not get some more bunyanut pines for another number of years. And so with the pine cone, you normally sort of split it open, and you would then find the seeds are cased in a couple of different layers. And so you want to pick a few of those layers off, and then you get down to the very last sort of casing of the bunyanut. Now, from what I am aware of, a lot of First Peoples in Australia, in around the area where I am, which is Brisbane, they would actually come together in particular parts, just north of here actually, and they would come together in ceremony and have a lot of ceremony based around the Banyana tree. So it was not necessarily a festival just for, a ceremony just for food, but it also had a lot of other significance in it as well, and I'd highly recommend you do your research and you speak to as many elders as you can about the origins of that and the stories of that. Some say that dinosaurs would eat the whole Banyana, and I guess, dinosaurs are real, then that doesn't surprise me at all. It would make a very large, nutritious meal for a really large animal like a dinosaur. Now, because of the size, you can actually sometimes get a bunyana pine cone that could have up to like 100 seeds just in one pine cone. So it can definitely produce a lot of food for many people, considering the size that it can get to and the quantity in which there can be even just nuts in one pine cone. Now, most people either boil them or roast them when you get down to the very last hard casing of them, and then you'd probably be able to open up the last shell and get the nut out after boiling them for a particular period or roasting them for a particular period. To me, the taste is similar to a potato, probably more so in texture. It's obviously a little bit sweeter than a potato. Well, that's my interpretation, but yeah, it's similar to potato, and you could obviously eat them by themselves. Once you finish cooking them, you can just eat them as they are. I have seen that you can purchase them made into a flour, so you can make things with them. Obviously, being a nut and not a grain, you could use that flour to make things for people who can't eat gluten, or other kind of flours and things that are normally made from grain. Obviously, you can do other things with them as well, like you can make a lot of really yummy plant-based cheeses you know, sort of artisan style cheeses with it. You can obviously make some really nice sauces with it. Because of the potato-like flavour, it can make a really good substitute. Instead of having gnocchi, the pasta gnocchi, you could just put actual whole or chopped up pieces of the banyana in a dish like that. I've seen people make jewellery out of some of the shells, and I'm sure you can do many things with a lot of the tree. I have heard of people making instruments and things out of it as well, but obviously there's some ethical implications around using like the wood in parts of the tree, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that. But you know, if you come across or you get gifted, should I say, a banyana cone, I highly recommend trying out cooking with it, and seeing if you can do any sort of creative things with the shells as well. Another one I want to talk about is the finger lime, and they have a really interesting looking fruit, so shaped a little bit like a finger, and then in the inside there's like these little tiny balls filled with juice basically, and it's just like little bursts of citrus. So finger lime comes from the citrus family, and it can come in many different colours as well, which always makes them really bright and colourful and quite appeasing to the eye. And I know it's been used for lots of different things in regards to health, so some people have may potentially used it in preventing certain diseases. It can be really anaesthetic to like infections like sores and boils and bites. It's got 3 times more vitamin C than a mandarin, so one finger lime, 3 times more vitamin C than a mandarin. You can obviously eat them raw. I quite like them raw. Obviously, being a citrus fruit, it's quite tangy, quite sour. You could also make dressings and sauces and jams, and you can even just substitute them, you know, use them instead of limes and lemons. Now the other one I want to talk about is lemon myrtle. So that's sort of heading away from, you know, a fruit and a nut and more into a herb style of plant. Mostly find those sort of central and southern eastern Queensland sort of subtropical areas, and also the north coast of New South Wales. Forgot to mention, with the finger lime, you can find them mostly in subtropical rainforest around southeast Queensland and in New South Wales as well. So back to the lemon myrtle. Because it's a leaf that most people would consume, so you would have that either fresh, or you can have it dried. You could have it as like a tea, or you could have it as a spice. You could obviously have it as a medicine, or you can have it as a flavouring. You know, it's got a lot of calcium, a lot of folate, a lot of vitamin A, a lot of vitamin E in it, and lots of other really good nutrients in it too. And I find that it's a really nice, palatable, very, very tasty kind of tea. So I really do enjoy having a lemon myrtle tea, and you could just get a couple of the leaves, put it in a cup, obviously after you've rinsed them, and then put some hot water in it, or boil it with some hot water. It's really nice. Okay, so next one, Davidson Plum. Now you mostly find those in subtropical and tropical East Coast Australia. I personally don't love the flavour. For my palate, I find it quite sour, especially when you eat it raw, but you can make it into things like jams and sauces, you know, chutneys. You can have it like dried. You can use it as a medicine. You could use it as a flavouring. You can sometimes get them in dehydrated powders as well. I've seen that. They're really good in like potassium, calcium, vitamin E, zinc, antioxidant. It's got a lot of lutein in it. Now, if anyone knows sort of much about lutein, it's got a lot of really good properties associated with that kind of nutrient. Avocados are usually quite high in it, but the Davidson Plum is way more high in lutein than even avocado is. So it can be very powerful flavour, but also really powerful medicine for certain things. And then the last one I talk about is a funny kind of name, but it's called pig face. But that's not the only term. Obviously, all of these medicines that I referred to, they probably all have their own like Italian, Latin, you know, kind of term, and they also have their own, you know, First Peoples term as well. And also, you'll have to bear in mind that there's about 500, at least 500 different First People languages in Australia, so things don't necessarily get referred to as the same name, even if they are supposedly from the same big sort of continental land. So a bit of a side note, of course. So I find or pig face probably around in the sand dunes of Queensland and New South Wales, so normally along coastal areas. It's quite salty for my palate. I'm not really a big fan of salty foods. You know, obviously you can use as a medicine, but you can use it as a flavour. You can eat the flower, and you can also eat the leaf. You can have it raw, you can have it cooked, so you can use it for like salads, stir fries, pickles. You can use it similar way to aloe vera for like bites, itchy, you know, itches on your skin, burns. Because it's quite salty, it can be a really good salt substitute, and it's got a lot of water in it. So, you know, thinking hypothetically here, in a survival sort of situation, pig face could actually be really good for getting in more water into the body, even though it's quite salty. I'm sure if many of you are watching this, probably don't have to encounter something like that very often, but should you, and for some bizarre reason in the future, yeah, make sure you identify what a pig face looks like, just in case if you need some water. Of course, it's very high in potassium, vitamin C, and yeah, it's a peculiar looking sort of plant, and yeah, once you sort of get used to the taste, it's not too bad. Now, so that is the list of sort of bush tucker foods. I guess you'd sort of, I might call them kind of like my faves. Although I don't love the taste of all of them, I have eaten. You know, I've tried them all, and I'm not against, you know, eating them again should they come my way. Often you may not find these kind of things sold in a lot of shops. If you do want to buy them, obviously I'd recommend you see if you can find them from an elder or someone who's very connected with First Peoples Australia that might be selling them. Or you could also find particular people and organisations that might run kind of like bush tucker foraging kind of workshops and things like that as well. And you may even be able to learn how to grow some of these on your property. So obviously if you reside outside Australia, you're probably not really going to find these kind of foods. You'll just have to come visit, and that's okay. And so in that case, I would encourage you to find some of your own bush tucker style foods that you might want to learn about in the area in which you reside in. It's amazing what you can learn when you start thinking outside the box of what a supermarket would provide for food. And you'll often find, as long as you're not eating anything poisonous and you're with someone that knows what they're doing, that the food's actually very high in a lot of nutrients, which some of our foods today do lack in. But I don't need to go into that, and I think that's enough of me talking about this for today. If you want to leave any questions or any comments, you're welcome to in the comments section down below. You can also find me on other various social media platforms, and that is in the description box down below. And I will see you again soon.